Greetings, everybody. It's me, Patricia Cori, bringing you part 2 of my enthralling conversation with the knowledgeable wisdom keeper of things beyond esoteric, the wonderful Brad Olsen. So stay tuned as I bring you part 2. And if you haven't seen part 1, you got to see it. Maybe you want to see it before you see this, because there's so much information. And we move now into part 2. I'll bring on Brad right now. I loved our first encounter. So now I'd like to, I'm having trouble getting away from Antarctica because it's so enthralling. We've got Nazis and deep state hunkered down in Antarctica. Where are the white hats and why haven't they gone in and cleaned the joint out?
Well, Antarctica is a huge continent to start with. It wouldn't be that easy. It wouldn't be that quick either.
If these world leaders know where to go to get to the hot spot, then we should surely know where they are. So what's preventing us from cleaning out? There's plenty of talk about the dumbs and cleaning out the tunnels. Why can't we clean out this cesspool in Antarctica?
Well, I would agree. It needs to be done. I don't have the information on how any operations might be proceeding down there to clear out the bases under the ice. They're certainly very well disguised, I guess, unless you really know where they're at and where you're going and how to get through the ice to get to them or find the entrance. But could be a very difficult operation.
Going down there having these secret meetings, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm convinced there are some bases there that shouldn't be allowed to exist. But we're talking about the whole secret government. That's not just the deep state here in the US, but really around the world. These controllers who have gamed the system with money and basically have controlling interests in the largest corporations. And they're the ones running the show. This was their intention all along, is that you would have this invisible type of master who can call the shots, as Adam Smith called the invisible hand that controls finances and different things within our society that we've seen happen. All be all, I would say there's locations elsewhere, such around the Vatican and Rome, and in Switzerland, more specifically in Zug, Switzerland, is where the most elite leaders of the world have their palatial estates. And it's called the Octagon Group. And this is the controlling elite. I remember I saw a military report from the French about 10 years ago. And it was a leaked plan to invade Switzerland. Neutral country, they're the good guys, right? Well, not so much. This is the place where they're able to shelter. And the French would come up and take the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, and Zug is just outside of Zurich. And this is the real control hub, the network. Maybe Antarctica is sort of like a faraway escape place, but I think the real movers and shakers are doing their decision making in Europe. And it is known that our Federal Reserve here in America is owned by foreign interests. So they have control of the printing press. And naturally, when you control the money supply, you have an unlimited source to bribe and blackmail and do whatever you want to get your way with the politicians, the judges. The only thing they haven't been able to buy out is our military. And that may be the last opportunity to take down the deep state in this country, or in a larger sense, maybe allied with, say, the French and going into Switzerland to take down this entire network. But we're in the middle of the battle right now, Patricia. I'm sure you're well aware that there is a silent war with quiet weapons that's going on right now both above us and below us.
I think it's the ultimate war. I mean, obviously we all refer to it as the battle of darkness and light, but this is World War III we're in, and people don't recognize it yet.
And this is the most important one of all, because this is going to determine whether this planet is a prison planet and will remain under lockdown, or if we can somehow shake the shackles of oppression and move on to a golden age, which of course is the outcome you and I would like to see.
Do you think that is the outcome?
One of the, one question I ask a lot of my hosts is the subtitle to Beyond Esoteric is called Escaping Prison Planet. And I like to ask the hosts a question: what is your version of what is Prison Planet? And if we could propose a way to get out, how would you escape?
Well, number one, obviously the Earth at this time is Prison Planet because our freedoms are being stripped away, and we're giving them away. We're allowing this. So we are prisoners of ourselves first and foremost. So that, in the case in Nazi Germany, the Germans went with it. They went with it. And how many other times in civilization have the people gone with it because they don't own their power? They don't understand their sovereignty. So, Prison Planet, of course, is the Earth, but the greater esoteric question is yourself. Are you your own prison planet because you don't stand in your power and strength and say no? And it takes courage to say no. And so these people that are doing that, I really say to people, bear in mind that a Trump is not the savior. What he is a heroic figure that he's heroic in many ways because he stands tall in the wake of adversity. And that in some important way, that is something that you can look to find that within you. To walk across from the White House to the church, and everybody said it was a photo op, and to see this man walk across and bring out this sense of strength and power when we are encircled by despotic, satanic leadership is quite remarkable. So it's the question of the prison planet, I think I've described. How we get out of it, it's very simple. Well, first of all, and I'm sure you and I agree on this, the recognition of the fact that we're only passing through this joint, okay? 80, 90 years in physical body, just passing through this tube called biological life. And that recognizing at the soul level, we knew exactly what we were doing. So people are saying that I'm a starseed or whatever. I'm not too worried about the names and the nomenclature, but to recognize that no matter what your trauma is, no matter how you see the outside world or your inner strife, just remember, you knew at the soul level, whether you're from Sirius or Pleiades or whatever, that you came here to be part of something. Perhaps it was just merely to have a glass of wine again. As Seth, I'm sure you read the wonderful Seth material back in the day, and this being said, oh, how before you give up your earthly life, I just want to tell you what I had longed to have a glass of wine and make love with a beautiful woman again. So we're going through this 90 years, if you're lucky, life from light to density to light again. And that the freedom eventually is the recognition of the fact that you are an eternal being, an immortal being. And that by recognizing that and stop worrying about your mortality, because you're going anyway. I just can't get my head around. I'm at real peace with death because I've been preparing for it. Like the Egyptians, like the Tibetans, I welcome the thought of passing to the next phase, not afraid of it. And so if people can get around to understanding that that is their ultimate prison, the fear is the prison, not the controllers, not the reptilians. They're a pain in the ass, but the ultimate prison is the fear. And if you recognize that no matter what happens, again, maybe you can get through your fear and start recognizing that, you know what? I want to have a beautiful memory of this planet and this life. I acquire all this knowledge. A lot of the things in your beautiful book, I know a lot about too, because I've been at this for decades, right? And I acquire the knowledge, and inevitably I have a compendium of information too. But the ultimate experience is, how do I apply this knowledge to make my life more powerful, more meaningful, more beautiful? And I believe that that is the ultimate expression of freedom and escape. And recognizing there's really nothing to escape from, because it's more about looking toward what is your next journey, your next experience. And when I go out of this earth, I want to look back and go, phew, wow, man, what a ride.
What a ride.
Yeah, that's my approach to life.
Well, that's great. Bravo.
Thank
Wonderful response. One of the best I've ever heard. And I do try to ask this with every host I have when we're talking about the book, because it is such an open question, and there's so much to the Earth experience that we're going through right now, that it is this escape, even metaphorically, from a prison planet, the prison planet that we impose upon ourselves. I love how you articulated that. That's so true. It's both interpersonal, it's our civilization, and it's the whole planet being under lockdown during this very crucial period.
And you know, when I look at these people with the masks and the, oh, and let me interject here for YouTube that we don't make any medical claims here. We disclaimer, this is for discussion and entertainment only. We're not making medical
course.
claims. When I see these people with these masks, fortunately, where I am right now, there's not a lot of it, because this is simple folk and we're removed from it all. But yeah, in order to go into in a store, you've got to wear the mask. But when I look at these goons, there's no other word I can use for the new government, all there with their black masks on, all sitting. They look like crows, a gathering of crows. No offense to crows. Okay. They're all there with their masks in this darkness. And I see other, because that's a show, but then you see the people, the common folk with their masks, and you see the fear behind it. Whereas the goons, I just see manipulation behind it. But you see simple folk with the terror behind it. And I think, you don't understand. You really don't understand. You've got to take off this mask and start living. I just don't get that people can allow themselves to be that mind controlled, that manipulated into that level of fear, of irrational fear, where they're cutting themselves off from source, from air, from oxygen, from prana, everything. I'm done here. I'm out. It's an extraordinary thing. I may have gotten off track. It's extraordinary.
Now they're double masking.
Pardon me?
Now people are wearing double masks. Why not just wear the whole box? I don't know.
You still not be wearing 17 masks and anal plugs. It's just too much. But
plug it all up.
No offense to everybody, because although I declare myself absolutely not politically correct, I do empathize with people that are working through that fear. And hopefully you get enough knowledge to start taking off some of the layers of masks, because eventually you'll drop dead from no oxygen. Then you don't have to worry about getting the disease, the virus, the whatever it is, which is a great segue into what I'd like to go to now, which is you are very knowledgeable, and you have, unfortunately, firsthand experience about AI parasites. But this is going to get a little heavy, people, okay? Because a lot of people don't know about Morgellons, and I think we need to talk about it. And I was quite reading your book. I've always been freaked out about Morgellons from the first time I ever heard about it back when two decades ago. From Clifford Carnicom, who you mentioned in the book. When I first came across Morgellons, this artificial intelligence, nano, I'm sure you're going to be able to describe it because you have it. And as you've said, most people have it, but we don't want to freak people out. Like, I'm not doing the wine test. I don't want to know. But this parasitic form that appears to be coming through chemtrails, or God knows, there's so many ways they can be dropping this stuff on us.
Yeah.
And this condition where you can speak firsthand of the crawling sensation, which is under the skin. It must be just horrific. And how this is artificial intelligence, nanotechnology. Tell us about your experience and what you know.
Well, the final chapter within the Ubermind section beyond esoteric is called Morgellon Nanobots. And once again, this is why it's beyond esoteric, because this is a very new phenomenon here on Earth, really only 2 decades old, like you mentioned. Keep in mind that the widespread spraying of geoengineering chemtrails has really also been only about 2.5 or 3 decades. Really, in 1997 was the full-on assault.
Yeah.
Now, I remember seeing them in the skies in the mid-1990s too, but I think they really started laying them down very frequently then. And there's a great researcher named Sophia Smallstorm, who I'm sure her video has been taken down long ago, but she was collecting water samples after heavy chemtrail days. And oftentimes I'll notice this out here in California, they'll do it before and after a storm. Part of what chemtrails are, and it is a multifaceted operation, that there's many uses for it. But the main one is to control the weather. And the Air Force has put out a document about 20 years ago called Controlling the Weather by the Year 2025. Okay, that's only 4 years away. So when they're spraying before and after a storm, they're actually literally able to steer it. Now, I remember seeing some videos produced by Disney, of all studios, talking about how in the future we're going to be able to control the weather. These came out in the 1950s.
Yeah.
How we'll never have to be subjected to killer hurricanes ever again. Well, what happened last hurricane season, Patricia? More hurricanes than have ever been seen before, with higher velocity and deadlier force than anything else.
What they didn't mention in Disney was not that they were going to be preventing them, but they were going to be making supercharged weather systems with this technology.
That's right. And it's important to understand geoengineering, which is also a chapter in Beyond Esoteric, that we have to understand the disbursement of not only barium, aluminum, and strontium. And isn't it interesting that the 2 largest elements, barium on the periodic table is Ba, aluminum is Al, Baal. Just another weird twist of things, how satanic these agendas really are. They often hide themselves in plain sight. Yeah. But according to Sophia Smallstorm's research, she was finding these Morgellon fibers in the rainstorms right after heavy chemtrail days. She was getting it in rain samples. They've been found at the top of mountains. Talked on the phone with Dane Wigington. He's one of the biggest geoengineering advocates to get information out to the people. He, of course, has been hugely censored, and they come down on him in many different ways. He's up in near Mount Shasta. And I'll tell you, Patricia, I'm a skier. I go up in the mountains all the time. I travel quite a bit. The trees are all dying here, from the southern Sierras and the Mojave Desert all the way up to the Cascade Mountains to BC, Canada. What I have seen firsthand, from about the 3,000 foot elevation to about 6. Trees are just dying, and it's because they're being sprayed. And part of what is in the chemtrails, Max Egan, who I met at a conference in Mount Shasta, he's in Australia. You know, Australia just had the worst wildfires in history. He was describing how they have also collected some of the samples after spraying, and it's basically the material they put in sparklers. Remember, we were little kids and we burned sparklers? Well, they're they're incendiaries. So they're able to kill the trees or get them in a distressed position, and then, oh yeah, then the beetle barks come in. Well, they invade a distressed tree because it's already in this state of starting to die. So the trees are kindling, but then they're part of the chemtrails are they're spraying these incendiaries, and that's why California has been having these out of control, worst wildfires in history in the last decade. And I've gone to many of the fire scars and seen the damage that has been wrought. And many of these fires make no sense at all. That plastic, which is microwave safe, doesn't burn right next to a house that is charred down to the foundation level, of cars whose internals have melted. After the fires in Santa Rosa in Coffee Park, my friend just lives 700 yards, thought his house was going to burn down. I found a car that was melted out, and I cracked aluminum as a souvenir. So these fires are burning in very unnatural ways. They're burning trees from the inside out. They're jumping over roads and burning out buildings, but trees right next to them are unaffected. That's
I had friends in Paradise who said they had a nanosecond to get out of the house. It was just so hot, so fast. They just grabbed their children. They had no chance to do anything else. They grabbed their children, jumped in the car, and managed to escape that hell. But you know, anybody who was paying attention knew this was nothing. There was nothing natural about these fires at all, and how these houses. And watching aluminum melt down the street, and the trees are still standing.
The town is basically burned out, and they're not renewing permits. Interestingly enough, even though you own the deed to your property, they're saying, well, you just can't get a permit to rebuild. In many cases, there were some people at this Mount Shasta conference 2 years ago with Max Egan. And they came up to me in confidence, knowing that I do research into chemtrails and geoengineering, saying to me, the reason they burned out Paradise is they know that deep down in the bedrock is one of the largest untapped veins of gold in the world. And as you know, the Sierra foothills is where the gold rush of 1849 began. The largest migration of people in the 19th century to go there to mine. So they knew about this, but they had to clear everybody out so nobody could claim mining rights or this or that. Because if we are to go back onto a gold standard, we're seeing more and more indication that this is going to be a monetary system that has to be based on something. The fiat currencies, they can only exist if all currencies are fiat. If even just one national currency goes on a gold or silver standard, who would invest in fiat currency anymore? We would all move right over there, even if it was like a Zimbabwe, because it was based on something. So that is why they have been so harsh on any country that wants to create their own central bank, which happens to be the axis of evil. All those countries that had their own independent central bank. It was Syria, it was
Libya,
Iran, it was Cuba, it was Libya, and Sudan. And look what happened to most of those countries.
A lot of people are very curious about this issue of gold standard. And, you know, do we really have enough gold on the planet to be able to sustain global economic systems? It doesn't make sense.
Well, you do if you have the largest vein that's ever been discovered still sitting untapped underground in Paradise, California, which is only 30 miles away from Sutter's Mill, where they first discovered gold in 1848. People that came up to me at the Mount Shasta conference that came up from Paradise and said, we're not able to rebuild our houses. They won't give us permits. They also burned out a swash of land 2 summers ago where they're putting the future high-speed rail. Just a coincidence. It happens to be the same path right along the lower foothills where they're going to
Yeah.
put the high-speed rail.
And Feinstein
Well,
and her husband are heavily invested in that project.
they're in on that too. They're hugely compromised by the CCP as well. Feinstein got busted because her chauffeur driver was a spy for China and heard her talking on the phone and confidant. And yeah, we got some big problems here in California. There's a big recall effort to get Gavin Newsom out of the governorship. When you drive into rural California, you see all kinds of signs, recall Newsom all over the place.
That's
There's
great.
also a secession movement in Northern California. They want to create the state of Jefferson, a breakaway state, much like in its state constitution, Texas can break away. And there are now even some suggestions that they're looking into that. There is a lot of discord in America right now. It is the red states and the blue state kind of thing. But I didn't want to get too far away from Morgellons. I just wanted to set
I wanted to get back to
the
Morgellons.
precedents. Yeah, set up the precedents for the dispersion of these nanofibers.
Some people don't know what they are, have never heard of Morgellons. So can you just, let's get elementary for a minute, explain to people what we're talking about, and then move from there.
Sure. Well, nano just means on a very, very small scale, right? Bots are like robots. Let me just see if we can show the Hitachi nanobots are smaller than a pinhead. These nanobots are made by Hitachi. They measure very small, 0.15 millimeter, and have GPS capabilities, sometimes called smart dust, as they can be sprayed on us and absorbed or taken in foods, drinks, and even injected. The nanobots have now been found in food, soil, vaccines, water, and even commercial products like maxi pad tampons. They've likely infected all people by now. And I know you said you didn't want to try the red wine test, but for your listeners who want to find out if they may have these nanobots, basically what you do is you get a dark red Cabernet wine, or you can use organic grape juice, and you hold it in your mouth for about 5 minutes. Swish around, hold it, don't swallow it, spit it out. And you tell me what you see come out of your own mouth. I've done this with about 3 dozen of my friends. Every single one, 100% has them. So I'm just telling you, we live in a very strange world right now. This is going beyond anything that people have ever seen before. We have been infected on a mass scale by these nanobots.
Nanoparticles, which then we need to talk about the COVID. We'll call it the health issue. Because I don't want this to get taken.
I call it the Franken jab.
Okay. But I
My code word is.
I don't like to use codes, but we don't want the bots, the algo bots, to take this video down. It's too important what you were talking about. All right, so so these, because I want to talk about the swabs with the test, which I've seen a piece of video where this woman, have you seen this? Where she shows the swab, and when she pulls it apart, you start to see the fibers moving.
Ugh.
Have you not seen it yet?
Another way we might be infected with it. Yeah, I'm very dubious.
When I've been looking at this test and thinking, okay, seriously now, why do they have to get this thing all the way into the brain-blood barrier? We've got the shooting at the third eye with the thermometer. We've got the fluoride destruction of the third eye, the pineal gland. And now you're sticking this thing so far deep that it's going into the brain barrier, almost reaching into the area of the third eye of the pineal gland. So for me, the first thing that, it speaks to me of attack on the pineal gland at all costs. And then, every time I see this, I know psychically that there's something, they're putting something in. Such an infectious health issue. You don't have to go halfway inside somebody's head to get a sample of it. All you need to do is a little swab in the mouth or spit, right? No, they have to go in there, and
Right.
the excuse for the
Isn't that why
public
we
is
wear the
there's a
mask?
special kind of cell that can give them the information. But what they're really doing is putting something in, and they're putting it into the blood barrier, brain barrier, so that it can traverse and get into the brain. And so I immediately assumed that it was nanos on that swab. And the other day I saw this video that I'll be happy to send you, where this woman says, "Look at this, honey. This is, I got Morgellons, and I'm telling you," she's saying, "that, you know, these fibers are moving. You see this? This is a normal swab, and this is the test." And she pulls apart the, let's call it cotton, and it starts to move. So this girl will never get the test.
Yeah.
Ever.
So
Anyway,
this is weird science and our worst nightmare all wrapped together. Farm animals are showing signs of Morgellon. So now our food source is being affected. Pets are showing these sores that come up through the skin that take a long time to heal. And this thing is very difficult to get out.
are you suggesting that these fibers are actually growing out of these nanobots? I'm kind of having a
Yeah.
hard time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a form of artificial life. So we're either breathing them and then they move their way into the stomach, which is so many different chemical compounds in our stomach. It's where most of our sickness emanates from the gut. I'm speaking at a conference next month with Robert O. Young, and he is one of the top leading physicians
He's wonderful.
about the bioterrain. And that's the chapter before Morgellon Nanobots, because we really have to understand first how they're getting into us, the bioterrain itself, which is by extension our immune system, how we can fight it naturally. Because look, I have it. I've been suffering from it for a decade. I'm a targeted individual, Patricia. I've been hacked on my computer, and I do believe that I'm suffering from this because of what I do. Now, look, I'm a very positive minded person. I'm also very strong physically. It's going to take a lot to get me down, but I have never, ever experienced anything like this because it just never goes away. It embeds itself into the cell tissue of the body. And without being toxic to try to get it out, the natural approaches are somewhat difficult. And I do offer a list of ways that people, if they do the red wine test, even before they have symptoms of it, can start to treat themselves. And it's always the holistic approach is what I would go down. I'm not a doctor and I can't recommend these things, but I'll tell you it's worked for me, and I'm nearly symptom free after a decade of battling with this, knowing how deep it is into my core, and just doing the healthy alternatives to turn this around, because I want to live, and everybody should want to have a healthy life and not have to deal with this. So we are being imposed upon by this dark synthetic agenda, and these nanobots are a form of life, and so they join together within the stomach, and then they can travel through the blood to pop out where they do on the skin. First, it starts with really intense itching, and it comes out sort of like it hurts so much, and you almost cannot stop to touch it. It's very difficult to refrain from itching because they're so painful. And then they kind of come out like with some pus, and then they'll bleed, of course, but they'll stay in there, and they're physical. You can see them. They're kind of like smaller than a grain of rice, but just sort of tubular and hollow. Dr. Carnicom has compared it to the strength of your fingernail. They're that strong, so they're harder than your skin, but you know they're there because you can see them, you can feel them, and they eventually come out. So our immune systems just get pounded by trying to heal the wounds and trying to excrete them as it can. But since this is a form of synthetic life, all life, including artificial life, strives to survive. And so it is looking for an opportunity to cling and stay on. And unfortunately, most of us have not so clean diets, and we become very acidic. This is what I cover in the bioterrain chapter. And by being acidic, it gives it the environment it needs to thrive. So conversely, by moving over to an alkaline diet and taking things such as baking soda, even though I love to drink coffee, I put baking soda in there. You can barely taste it, but it changes an acidic drink into an alkaline drink.
Oh, that's
so if you
good.
just start doing that, if you just start doing that with everything you eat and consume, I think this is how I've been able to turn it around for myself. But I've been targeted on a big way because of my research and work. I know for a fact I've been hacked. I've even had my lawyer see my computer screen go haywire. Whatever you type turns to gibberish. One thing I have gotten, and I keep right here, is this. It dampens the 5G and other frequencies. It is called the Qi Shield, QI Shield, and it's from Synergy. And actually, I represent this product because I believe in it, and I know it's helped my situation. If you use the product code Harmony, you can get 10% off of these. Here is the name of it, Qi Shield, or
like
Qi,
like
QI. Yeah, that is how they.
This brings up an important question, and that is the interface between the Morgellons or the nanos and 5G.
Yep.
So,
and this is a huge piece of the puzzle, because it's the frequency which feeds the Morgellons. Once it's in your body and how it grows, if you cut it off with, say, clean lifestyle, exercise, eat clean food, drink clean water, and you cut off the source, and you even take a shower after a heavy chemtrail day, get it off you, then what's inside of you has to be charged. And it is radio frequency. That is what the nanobots do. As I said in the description of those Hitachi smart dust, they have GPS capability. So they can actually communicate. And they then, I mean, this is such a devious subject. Most interviews I do, even when they read the book, they don't really want to go into this. And I can understand why. It's pretty dark science.
No, if you've got the courage to face it and to talk about it, then we certainly have the courage to listen and to try to understand how to deal with it. Because other than hearing about Joni Mitchell, who is really plagued.
She's the most famous person that has it.
I've never personally met anyone that's had to battle with this. My research is 20 years in the making too, from the days of Clifford Carnicum. Excuse me, I didn't know he was a doctor. But it always horrified me. And this was way before we understood nanobots. I mean, it was clear that this was very potentially coming from the trails, the chemtrails. But the association now with these nanobot particles, how what you're saying is they grow, these worms, let's call them worms, grow out of the bots. And so what feeds them? Is it the frequency that feeds them?
If you're consuming or receiving new ones through the skin, through your lungs, through food, through drink, they can work together in your stomach to continue the life. Once they're spread out over your body, then they become their own little hives under the skin. And some can last for weeks or months. I've had one on my hand, it's almost gone now, maybe not even see it, for over a decade. For over a decade, I've been trying to get that thing out of there. And so they become their own little nest.
Can you show us again
And
this little bump? Wow. It's
there it
there.
is. 3 of them.
Oh,
So I was
I
using
feel
this.
empathize.
I was using this zapper device, and it made it react. It was, you could feel it like a little robot under the skin. I mean, it's so gross. It's just so beyond really anything we've ever dealt with, but it transferred itself to that second one. So I kind of made it worse by using the zapper.
What is the zapper?
Even though I could feel it.
What is
Well,
the
they're battery powered, and it's got 2 little nodes on it that shoot electrical shocks through there, and then you can feel the Morgellon, because it does have internal componentry, often with metals. So through the chemtrails, as I mentioned, we're getting huge amounts of aluminum. We're getting other heavy metals in our body, also through food, such as fish that are heavy in mercury. These metals are recomposited with the Morgellons. And sometimes the larger Morgellons, when they come out, you'll see tiny little flakes, tiny little metallic flakes that also come out. They look like computer chips in a way. They're perfectly square, but they're metal, because sometimes you'll see them in the sun and it's like glitter. But you know that it came out when some of these are discharging. So when they discharge, they're also trying to spread. Life attempts to stay alive, even artificial life. And even when using MMS has been a good approach, and other formulas. This is a form of MMS. You can get it.
When I
through Crown
interviewed Jim
Wellness.
Humble, the inventor of MMS, he
Oh,
said,
good. Yeah, I
yeah,
communicated
I
with Jim
interviewed
Humble.
him, love him. Way back when, because
Yeah.
my program now used to be a radio show, and I interviewed some pretty heavyweights, and I interviewed Jim, and I asked him about it, and he said, at this moment,
That's great.
I cannot say that MMS is going to heal it, but we do know it improves it. Would you agree with that statement?
I would agree with that. I don't think it's the kill shot, but it does also help with other functions that Morgellons has, such as candida, which is the over production of fungus. Now, every healthy body produces candida. It's when we die, this fungus helps our body start to break down and become part of the earth again. Well, you know that when people die these days, because we've eaten so many preservative foods in our life, our bodies are like pickled, and they don't decompose as quickly as they used to just 100 years ago because of all the preservatives, but also because of this candida overgrowth, which is a direct affiliate with Morgellons. And I cover these topics in the bioterrain and the Morgellon Nanobots chapter in Beyond Esoteric. And I don't think many authors want to cover this.
The two aspects that you're discussing here, candida and alkaline versus acid, is also the imprint of cancer.
That's
So
right.
it's interesting that
Right.
both of these aspects are aspects that bring that help create metastasis of cancer. So, gee, people, I guess we should really be paying attention to this. And what about heavy metal detox? I'm sure you've done plenty of those. Does it help?
Absolutely, it helps, and it's something we should all consider doing because we're just getting assaulted by heavy metals in so many different ways, as described. That too makes us very acidic. There was a Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Otto Warburg, who said that no cancer can survive in an alkaline body.
Yes.
So this is known over 100 years ago, Patricia, 100 years ago. Well, let me just take you through what modern medicine has told me about Candida, but more importantly, Morgellons. I went into the dermatologist, one of the top dermatology departments in San Francisco, about a decade ago, and they gave me all kind of creams, and they thought it was like a rash, or they thought I was doing it.
Illusion.
Even though I'd bring them in samples and said, here, let's put this under a microscope, let's take a look. They wouldn't do it. Then finally, they kept telling me, you just got to leave them alone. You got to just stop itching them. And while that is good advice, and I don't recommend picking at them, but getting them come out naturally and then dispersing them out through the body, say by cleanliness, they told me that it was all a psychosis.
Yeah.
Look, I've never been on psych meds in my life. They said it was delusional parasitosis, that it was all in my head, that I was dreaming these things up, and I'm just picking at myself incessantly, and that's what's creating the problem. So when they sent in a psychiatrist to put me on psych meds in the dermatology department, I said, that's it. You're making this worse. And these creams you gave me, maybe it helped spread them around even more. So allopathic medicine has failed us in treating Morgellons at the very least. But this whole notion that we take these pharmaceutical medicines, which have their basis in petroleum industry. Did you know that the Rockefellers, John D. Rockefeller, the first billionaire in the world, after he had already cornered the market with Standard Oil, there were all these byproducts from petroleum. And he realized that what pharmaceutical products need is petroleum byproducts. So the Rockefellers got into medicine in a big way about 100 years ago. And by doing so, they cornered the market because, once again, they flooded universities with money to say, you will follow the pharmaceutical protocols that we're telling you about. And if you don't, we're cutting you off. And then we're going after you. So scientists such as Royal Raymond Rife, who about 100 years ago in the 1930s came out with this very high-tech microscope that could look at all pathogens, from viruses to cancer to other parasites, and realizing that everything has a frequency. The future of medicine, Patricia, is color, sound, and frequency.
Which, of course,
been known for
have been
decades.
using all forever.
Yeah, I profile him in my book, Future Esoteric. He was able to match the frequency of cancer cells and just blow them up, right? Think about how a opera singer can shatter a wine glass with their voice.
Was it
That's
a Rife
frequency.
machine?
It was a Rife machine, that's right. He was ruthlessly suppressed.
Yeah.
His laboratory shut down, burned down, sued by the AMA. They did everything they could to destroy him, and they did. You can't even get Rife treatment here in America anymore. Got to go over the border to Mexico to do it. And that is one possibility on how to treat Morgellons, because everything has a certain frequency or resonance. And to match it and then destroy it using that frequency is one way to kill it. Another very promising solution are these med beds that can look at the body holographically. And apparently this is one of the suppressed technologies that may be coming out with Nasara Jasara, if the whole promise of releasing all this technology that has been suppressed, over 600 patents of free energy technology to zero point, to the medbed technology that can see your body holographically and all the invasive viruses, parasites, pathogens, and then able to extract them. There is great promise for the human race. We're a very inventive species. Absolutely. And we're good at backward engineering technology. Things like the down in Joshua Tree, just outside of Joshua Tree, where we did Contact in the Desert, is Launders, California, which has the Integratron, which was built by George Van Tassel in the 1950s. There's
Wow.
no nails. It's a perfectly round building, and what it would do is infuse the body with negative ions. And I one time was at a conference with Chad Van Tassel, his nephew, who was telling me about how the visitors, Pleiadians, who are very human-like, very tall, blonde hair, I might be able to pass as one, they were coming there and helping George build the Integratron. Just before it was meant to go online, the men in black came, sabotaged it, shut him down, shut off his funding source, basically drove him crazy like they did with Royal Raymond Rife. So anytime you have these very futuristic inventors who are ahead of their time, although they're really of their time, they're just getting ruthlessly suppressed by these dark forces that want to keep us down. There is an anti-human depopulation agenda that we have to address, and we have to know how to combat, or it will consume you. We must be over the target, Patricia, to get this close and take as much flack as we have.
Exactly.
So,
Tell me a little bit more about the 5G suppressor, which I think is going to be something people are going to be very interested about. How does this function? Do you have any, obviously, if you're endorsing it, you know a little bit about it. How does it work?
Right. So the Qui Shield is basically, we're in a sea of frequencies right now, from our Wi-Fi to cell phone antennas to just everyday life. You really can't escape it unless you're, say, down in Antarctica or very far off the grid. So few of us can actually live off the grid anymore. So we're just in a wash of sea of frequencies. And there are good frequencies and bad frequencies, as we know. But our human body, our mammals and animals, we're not supposed to be around this stuff. This is all very much new to the human experience. And so the Key Shield, QI Shield by Synergy Medicine, they basically create these guards that will absorb the frequencies around you and make them inert in a way they don't hurt you anymore. And I'll tell you, ever since I got this thing as a product endorsement, and I've no stake in the company other to say, give them a try. This thing has helped me tremendously. I'll say that for sure, because my condition has changed dramatically.
So does it have a radius of potential? You have to have one in each room?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
You can get one for your whole house if you're in a big house. This one is for a room or a small apartment, which is similar to where I'm at. You can even get them on a personal basis. And it's synergyscience.com if people want to check it out again. The code word is Harmony if you want to get 10% off on these products.
Okay. I'll put that up on
I
the
just
screen.
feel like, yeah, we know that we're in a field of frequencies, especially if you're in a city or even a small town. They're everywhere. Cell phone towers are everywhere. You can't avoid them. Even if you don't have a cell phone, even if you don't sleep in the same room as, say, your Wi-Fi router, you're still being subjected to it. So just a way to protect yourself. And that's what this is.
And does it negate, or does it, in other words, when it's on, are you able to still get a signal? Does it mute your signal?
Oh yeah, it doesn't change any of that. All it does is absorb the frequencies that are in your immediate environment. The harmful ones that would, for example, help Morgellons grow, help make you feel a sense of discord, which new science is starting to show that when you're enveloped in these harmful frequencies, they do start to affect you physically
Absolutely.
and mentally.
Absolutely.
They will start to break you down. And if you don't know where it's coming from, if you don't even know anything about this, you're just going to think, well, why do I feel sick or down all the time? And you might be surprised that this could be why.
Tell us again what happens when you slurp the wine and look inside the glass.
Okay, so the wine test, and I describe it in Beyond Esoteric how to do it, but it's real quite simple. You just hold half a wine glass full of red wine. I find works the best, although if you're with children or people that don't want to touch alcohol, you can use organic dark grape juice. You hold it in your mouth for about 5 minutes, and you spit it out in a dish. What comes out is not spit. It is Morgellon fibers. It exists in the soft tissue of your cheeks and your neck. And maybe it's the resveratrol, one of the properties, healthy properties of red wine, can extract it from your cheek, from the soft tissue. Then when you spit it out in a bowl and you see, well, that looks awfully strange, you can drain off the wine and then put a little rubbing alcohol on it. And about half the time you can get these things to react. They start to squiggle around. And look, that came out of your mouth, okay? That's what freaks people out and why a lot of people don't even want to try it. To see this artificial life that is existing in your own soft tissue that comes out of your own body, and you can make it react to rubbing alcohol.
Well, I think that a lot of people would be just so completely freaked out about this that they won't want to do it.
I know.
I'm one of them. I don't.
The brave ones will. I was thinking of doing a workshop. And in fact, the name of the chapter in Beyond Esoteric, it was not going to be Morgellons Nanobots, but it was going to be the Morgellons Cure. And I might still do a book about that. But of course, I have to get myself completely cured from it too. And I'll tell you, this is the most difficult health challenge I've ever faced in my life. It is just something truly out of this world. You mentioned Joni Mitchell, the folk singer. She is the most outspoken and famous person who has had Morgellons. She called it the alien fiber. Those are her words. And I'd say she's probably pretty right, because this is an anti-human depopulation agenda. And if left unattended, it will kill you. Clifford Carnicom, who runs the Carnicom Institute, one of the leading research institutes into Morgellons, has reported that people who have it real bad, when they die, they do an autopsy, they open them up, and it's everywhere. These things will consume you if left unhindered. It has to be dealt with. And as dark of a story this has become, for people to understand what it is, to do the wine test, to see that it's in you, and if it interacts with the rubbing alcohol, you know you got it, and it's only a matter of time before it's going to start sprouting out of your skin. And if you're in an environment that is heavily doused in frequencies, that's going to feed it, because it has GPS, it has ways to communicate outside. I don't know if you know this, Patricia, but in the middle of the night, they crank up the amplitude of Wi-Fi and frequency towers. And so a lot of people who suffer from Morgellons say that they'll wake up in the morning and new sores will just be enveloping out of their body, because in the middle of the night, they do this. What are the solutions? How do we get off the grid? How do we get away from this? You can't imagine how pervasive it is in our world today and how difficult it is. So that's why I suggest people use things like colloidal silver. Mine has essential oils in there, such as rosemary and oregano, essential oils. There are things we can do that are non-invasive.
What about monoatomic gold?
Great question. Colloidal silver is part of that family. So monatomic gold, this is a very interesting subject. When they first got into the Great Pyramid of Egypt, they found near the sarcophagus that is in the king's chamber this white powder. somebody had the foresight of collecting it and sending it back to the British Museum. And it wasn't till years later that they finally analyzed it. I first read about this in Bob Frisell's book, Nothing in This Book is True, but it's exactly how things are. And he said that, and I've also found other data points suggesting that this white powder that they found in the king's chamber was actually the residue of consuming monatomic gold. Now, what is monatomic? Again, mono, one, atomic, subatomic level. Monatomic gold is not quite like gold as we know it, AG on the periodic table. It's actually in a powder form, totally different. It is still gold, but it is in this different state. So as I describe it in Beyond Esoteric, monatomic gold is this powder that can be extracted not only from the, you can get it out of the ocean, so you can extract it from seaweed. As I understand, they can harvest it in Hawaii, but they've also found it in the soil and it can be extracted that way. So monatomic gold is naturally available, primary mineral of the Anunnaki when they were coming here to Earth. So the ancient astronauts were called the men from heaven to Earth came, and according to Zechariah Sitchin, they helped create the human race to get gold. And there are ancient gold mines all across South Africa. Michael Tellinger is a colleague and friend of mine. He's told me quite a bit about how they have found these gold mines, as well as very ancient structures, some of the oldest structures of the world. So, ruling labor, they genetically manipulated the genes of proto-humans to become the human race that we know of today as Homo sapien, to do their dirty work in the mining action. So they wanted the humans to be smart enough to take orders, to know how to dig the gold, but still dumb enough to question authority and not to rebel against their masters.
Right.
That's how Sitchin and Tellinger and others say the human race was a genetic creation. That even the founder of DNA, Francis Crick, who won a Nobel Prize in science for discovering DNA, said there is no way the human race could have just popped onto the scene
Absolutely.
with all that we have at our disposal, just from evolution itself. He said it was like going to a yard sale and seeing a 747 completely laid out piece by piece on the lawn and putting it all together, that our DNA was that complex and that impossible. So even Francis Crick, the discoverer of DNA, was a believer in the panspermia, that we had been populated. All the flora and fauna came from elsewhere and populated here, like a coconut floating all the way across the Pacific Basin and growing a tree thousands of miles away from where that seed originated. So too was the life forms on this planet. The point here being that our DNA was hugely manipulated, and the human race itself is a conglomeration of proto-humans as well as very advanced DNA as well to make us this Homo sapien creature. So it should come as no surprise that Homo sapiens were also genetically manipulated. Look, remember 30 years ago, they had Dolly the sheep, the first cloned mammal that came out of a laboratory. You don't think we have the technology now to clone humans? Of course we do.
Of course we
And
do.
there's many examples of how that's done.
My own material, the Syrian Revelations, talks about the Syrian experiment and how different genes and information was assembled to create the human Homo sapiens. So we're on the same page on almost every subject here. Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen,
Yeah.
I could talk to you forever. And my question is, can you come back on and on and on again?
Oh, for you anytime, Patricia. I really enjoyed this. And boy, you know, it's a great interview, and 2 hours just passes by in the blink of an eye. And it seems like we've only scratched the surface.
We have only scratched the surface, but there's a real kinship here. And, you know, I know that we need to talk a lot more, and that people are going to be just so excited to receive all this difficult information. But my point is look at the darkness. Don't be afraid to look, because only by looking can you heal it. And so I go where you know people don't necessarily want to go, but you know, in the end, the question is, how do you heal it? How do you bring it up to the light? How do you make it work so that you are integrated, you're in balance, and you're not fearful? My whole message to people is get out of the fear and move into power. And you are a walking example of that. And I'm so honored to have you and to know that you'll come back and back and back and back. You know, it really,
Anytime,
I can't believe we haven't met before this, because so many of your colleagues have been on my show, or I know them personally, and somehow I never connected with you before. I guess the time was meant to be now. So I will, of course.
Well, we're friends on Facebook, and we communicate once in a while over the socialist media.
Yeah, I just can't believe we've never had this opportunity.
But here we are.
I'm really, and especially because I just think, you know, I can't even believe we didn't run into each other in Santa Cruz or somewhere. Anyway, Brad.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to close out for now, and I will be putting all the information about where to find your books and all of that. You need to send me all that so that I can put it in graphically into the video.
Sure.
I'd love you to also come back on with Michael Tellinger. Would you do that? Would you talk to him?
Oh, if you could set it up for the three of us, I'd love to be on with Michael, and we can get well deep into early Homo sapiens, the gold mines of South Africa, and more about monatomic gold, which was the excelsior of the gods that was used by the pharaohs. And what it can do is induce out-of-body experiences. And so that's what that sarcophagus in the king's chamber was all about: ritual initiation ceremonies.
And by the way, I mean, I've taken so many groups in there, and we've had some pretty awesome experiences inside that sarcophagus. It's a time machine.
Oh yeah.
So
it really is.
If you'll talk to Michael and he'll say yes, then we'll schedule something as soon as possible, because there's so much more to share, and I can't wait.
Oh, I'd love to do that. And that would be 3 continents. You're in Europe, he's in South Africa, I'm in North America.
We can make it work.
That's the beautiful thing about this modern age, is we can pull things off like that.
So the good side of technology is
happy to be a part of that. Yep.
Great. Is there anything you want to leave people with from this beautiful, intense conversation?
Thank you. Well, I would just say, please check out my new book. You can get it in ebook form. You can get it in paperback. It's doing quite well out of the gates.
Good for you.
And thank you for having me on. Go to CCC Publishing, and you can actually read excerpts with a Google Book app on our website. And if you order it over that website, cccpublishing.com, and it's one of my books, then I can sign a copy as they come out of my office. If you want to know more about me, bradolsen.com. And there's even a website for the Esoteric Series, which you can find out about all 3 of the books right there. So
yeah, and
thank you for having me on, Patricia. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. I look forward to doing more interviews with you in the future.
I'd love it. Okay, so it's up to you now to get in touch with Michael Tellinger and get back to me, and we'll get that happening as quickly as possible. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Matrix. We will be back with you soon. Glean from this information everything that you need to be empowered and to be in touch with reality and to be aware and awake and master of your being. This is Patricia Cori and Brad Olsen signing out for today. Thanks for listening.